float in, but we're going to get going here. We need to do a little housekeeping stuff. There's an item I'm going to ask Ginny to clarify in just a minute before we dive into all of our work. So, and Ginny Shanker is here from MCCA. So, that's awesome. She was there yesterday at the office hours too. So if you have specific questions for her, you can ask. Okay, so if you have not gotten into the drive, please get in the drive. If anybody needs the link, let me know if you don't have it, but we need someone to get in your school into the drive. Go to the folder that says intensive meeting documents, because what we are in is the intensive. Some of you, this might be your first time joining. So your team is used to this and they have someone that does this each time. What we have is a document that I have you copy each time, and it's called the schedule, and that's basically it's almost like our lesson plan, and it's going to have activities that we're going to do today. So someone from each team needs to copy meeting schedule 5, put your name in it, and then put it in your Google Drive folder on this drive so that the other people in your team can access it if they'd like to. Okay. Okay, we've got SMC is done and OCC is done. You're just letting your team know you got your form copied. Yes. I was all excited. I was like, your plan's totally done? That's so exciting. Yeah, very, very excited. Okay, so. Get people in, get going with this. Okay, so hopefully I think we're getting forms copied, and we'll be working on those in just a little bit. This is what the schedule looks like, and it outlines, what we're going to do. Now, don't jump ahead and don't start working on all the fun. Again, that spoils the excitement. So stay with me as we work on these things, because this is one of the things that, especially if you're new to me, I'm Kathy Almy, for those of you that might be new to me. This is what I do and what I've done for many years, which is math redesign at an institutional level. And I've been through it so many times that I know usually the pattern of how this all works out. And we're getting into the part now where we're bringing in more people and we're trying to do things on a larger scale. It's not just about curriculum, it's about making things happen. And whenever that happens, we're going to have disagreement. It's totally normal. But what I have found is that in higher ed, we are very polite and we do not always know how to disagree with each other and continue working forward. So we're going to talk about that today. I'm very much one of those people that goes there, and I want to give you tips from the schools. Like, when there's a reason, when I'm working with a school, that when I'm working on school one-on-one, why do we get so far in their redesign, and some other schools do and some other schools don't? It's not because I'm special. It's because all the schools that make it really far have someone usually who is driving it, is going to keep going no matter how tough it gets. And there will be moments where you don't agree. And there will be moments where you may not like some of your colleagues and you just fundamentally, philosophically aren't on the same page about something. This brings up all kinds of stuff. The key to getting your redesign to happen effectively is persistence. Just like we tell students, it is persistence. You have to stay with it even when it's not fun. And so my job is to, kind of give you the map, let you know where the bumps are going to be and help you navigate them so that they don't have to be as difficult. If you get into a place where you get stuck, the goal is to help you through it. And that's what we will be doing. All right, so you should have your sample. I've got mine pulled up. We did that. Okay, and we're going, let's see, it's 2:08 Eastern, so we were going to 4 p.m. Eastern. And sometimes I leave the breakout rooms open, but I have another meeting after this one, so I will be closing them at 4 p.m. Eastern. But like I said, you're going to have plenty of time to work together. But doesn't mean you're going to get everything done today. There's highly doubtful that anybody will get all of this done. And that's okay. That's why we have another meeting. That's why we have office hours. And I'm going to give you some suggestions based on where you get to, what you can do between now and the next time that I see you. Okay, so one thing that came up, okay, so I spoke about the idea of boot camp / bridge programs last time, and I gave you some different best practices. And I probably only said this once, and I probably should have clarified it. And so Judy's going to speak to this in just a second. The difference between what is just like a math boot camp and what is the academic catch-up that Michigan is offering funding for. I do want you to know that they might be the same thing, they might not, it depends. So if someone was like, how are we going to be able to do all of an academic catch-up in 4 days? Because that was one of the examples I gave. There's people that do a math boot camp refresher in 4 days. They don't do the whole shoot and match with campus tours and English and all of that. If you're going to do all of those things, it's going to take you longer than 4 days. But I'm just saying, if you're trying to figure out how long to spend on the math piece, it doesn't need to be months, and it doesn't even have to be several weeks. But Jenny, I'd like you to speak to it because I know you've gotten some questions.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Kathy just said. And because I started to hear from people the same thing, like, oh, well, we're hearing that boot camps are supposed to be short, so we need to make our program short. And I think that these are really two different things, but that doesn't mean you can't build an academic catch-up program around a short math boot camp. You could have a short math boot camp and a short English boot camp and a wraparound of the career exploration and advising and college knowledge kind of things that are required in the academic catch-up program. That there's no reason that you can't do that. There's a lot of flexibility in how those programs should be scheduled. But I just wanted to, but also you should consider the possibility of offering boot camps, not just in the summer, but at other times of the year too, particularly in light of the requirements in the new Reconnect Act that, that say that you can only put students in co-rec classes, but you can use other options that are non-paid for students and that are outside the tuition and fee structure of the college, and boot camps would qualify for that as well. So that would be something, you could offer a boot camp in, the week before the winter semester starts. You could offer a boot camp that meets during the first week of the semester, or there's various boot camps are academic catch-up programs is one particular thing. Boot camps, I think, can be deployed in many different ways, one of them being within an academic catch-up program. Does that make sense?
Does anybody have questions about that? Because, unmute, put them in the chat, whatever we need to do. How about that? Yes,
Yep.
Gary.
Yes, thank you for saying that, Jenny. JB Muhlenberg, who's not with us today, I don't believe. He's working on our campus to have like automatic email invitations sent to anybody who drops a math class, so that like in the middle of the semester, they could start our ALEX program so they're ready to go the next semester. And that would be managed by that College Success Center. So that's just an option, I guess. And
Yeah.
of course, that's a no cost option to the student.
Right. And I mean, you don't, that's a nice idea to send it to the people that drop the math class, but you might think about, should you be inviting people that, a lot of people are talking about their concern with students who have low scores, but you're having to place them in co-rec because of Reconnect. Why not send them an invitation to start your ALEX program as well?
That just made me think of something, because I've seen this throughout this week. So there seems like there's always a theme every week of things I'm reading. So I'm curious, do any of you have subscriptions as a campus to any of these programs that allow you to do nudging, where you can send like texts to students? There's different software. I'm just curious if you do, put it in the chat, your school, and then what software it is. It's, it's not free, but I've heard different things about schools doing things like that with some success. Kind of like what is that? It's not First Alert. There's another thing that a lot of, what is it?
Starfish.
No, there's a thing a lot of campuses have where we're supposed to, like in the very first couple of weeks, if we see anybody that is struggling, that we put in, there's a way that you can normally put in a note that will go to advisors to let them know, can someone reach out to them that they're struggling? The problem is, and those are still worth doing. It's just the data often comes back that students don't respond to those notes, but it doesn't mean it's not worth doing. It's just, we're not always going to get great response from them. Okay. Montcalm has starfish. Okay. Yeah. Academic warning, faculty, yes. Yeah, I'm just curious. There's different ones there's ones that you can nudge through, just like you can just send emails, but then there's also these actual programs that colleges subscribe to that are through text. So, but I was just curious. I've not heard a ton of colleges using some of them, but I've heard some. Okay, we advise anything automatic. All right. Oh, cool. All right. I always like hearing what you guys are using. Okay, so I don't like opening cans of worms, but I know this question has come up too many times and I want to make sure we're all on the same page with something. And I got clarity on something. So I want to just, so if you're doing email and you're a math faculty member, come to the computer. Okay, so one of the things that has come up is dealing with the STEM pathway, and some colleges already, like I believe Henry Ford is one, Jackson is one, where they have an intermediate algebra that's already numbered above 100. They've made that so it's already a college level course at their school. So, and they're using it for other, like some areas are using that as their last course for their program to meet a requirement. They're using their beginning algebra as a co-requisite for it for the STEM pathway. And we've had schools are like, well, we've told we can't do that. Schools are saying, well, we can do that. I got some clarity on that. It's what it sounds like is, if that truly is a college level course, intermediate algebra for you, and it's actually used for some program, I think, Jenny, am I right? That's okay, but we can't take, and this is where I may have been unclear. I do not believe you can take your beginning and intermediate, if they're numbered O something, change them into 100 level, and then offer one with the co-rec to the other. So what questions do we have about that? Or what things do you need to be clarified? Or if you're sitting there right now highly irritated, please unmute and let's talk through it. Or at least, or let me know when we go to breakouts at some point. Gary.
Yeah, I'm not highly irritated, but we actually got rid of our whole intermediate algebra class about last semester. It was at some point called Math 100A. So it was a 100 class, but we just felt having a beginning and an intermediate as a 2-semester sequence wasn't necessary for the audience we're dealing with, because almost all of the students that were going to be STEM students would be starting in pre-calc or college algebra or something like that anyway. And the other ones in the math for liberal arts and the stats, they were either going to be in a co-rec, or if they needed a standalone pre-rec, which is like evil, they would be in our fundamentals of algebra class, which was kind of a cherry picking of the beginning and intermediate put together. And so we did come up with the fundamentals of algebra. We have it as Math 098. It is a recommended pre-rec for certain students, but not required for anybody.
So what are you doing with that going forward?
What do you mean?
Because that, like a reconnect student couldn't take that.
Right. And the college is just trying to figure out how to handle that. I mean, we don't have very large enrollments in that class anyway. So there's not a large number of people that we would not receive funding for if it were to come to that. It's not really my department to figure out all the money, but they're aware of the situation. And we're just offering that for a limited number of people each semester. But the most of the people will be in the, if they're STEM, they're probably starting in pre-cal or college algebra anyway. So the 0 level stuff doesn't matter. If they're non-STEM, they should be in the co-rec. And if they need one of those 0 classes, we just have to deal with that. We have a similar situation too with we have a pretty healthy nursing program, as a lot of community colleges do too. And they have a rule, they have to pass a certain level of math proficiency or they have to take this class. And previously we had people in nursing taking up to like 3 0 level classes. So we got rid of all those and we have a 099 for that. And, there was some talk, well, should that be a 100 so it gets paid for and this and that and the other. And that's been looked at every which way from Sunday. And everybody who looks at that class concludes it's a 0 level class. So I mean, so some people, it won't be paid for. They can either pay for it themselves, they can apply to a college, and the college will pay for it, or, but we have to get around that whole knot, basically. But the point is, it is a zero class. We can't really, in academic credibility, make it a 100 level class, just so we get paid for it. And, but, I mean, it's not clear what's going to happen with that in the future. Maybe I should just leave it with that. It's not clear
Yeah.
what's going to happen with that in the future.
Can I speak to that? And I just would like, I would like everybody to hear this, like just a couple of things with what you just talked about that 1-0 level class that some students have to take or are going to take. I just was part of an exchange with the Ava from 60 by 30, who reminded another college that the Reconnect Act is really, the language in the Reconnect Act is really clear that Reconnect students cannot be placed in or they can only take co-requisite classes. So if you have, and it's not about whether or not the Reconnect will pay for them, it's about whether you will remain an eligible institution if you have Reconnect students taking a standalone 0 level class. That is the language in the act says that the rules of the Reconnect program are that Reconnect eligible students can only be in co-requisite classes or these other options where they are not charged at all. So no, the students should not pay for them themselves. The students should not use their financial aid to pay for those 0 level classes. If you decide that you're using a 0 level class as an additional remediation option for Reconnect eligible students, they have to be in it for absolutely free. So that's something to consider.
Right, and we're considering that at Muskegon. The only issue we have with large numbers of students, and as I said, nearly everybody is going to be in the co-recs anyway.
Right.
The 0 level remedials are very small numbers of students. The biggest 0 level class is that nursing class. And I don't know how to get around that, because the nursing department says they have to demonstrate proficiency, and they give them 3 tries at this test and they don't pass it or whatever. And then they have to take the course. And
right. So then if they're Reconnect eligible, they have to take the course for free, according to the way that the act is written.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's for somebody else's to worry
Right.
about.
I mean,
Yeah.
I just wanted to put that out there to bring it back. I'm happy to talk with anybody offline about that as well, but I just want to make sure that that's clear to everybody, because I've heard that from several different people that, oh, well, it's okay if Reconnect students are in our remaining standalone class, developmental ed classes, because it just means Reconnect can't pay for them, but they could use their financial aid or they could self-pay, and that is not true. There will be potential jeopardy. Now, in the situation where you didn't know that a student was a Reconnect student and they're in the class or whatever, I think, you're just going to have to be on it, I believe, as a student services organization and a business office organization, to make sure that you don't have Reconnect students using financial aid or self-paying for standalone developmental education classes.
Right. I guess my only final comment to that would be that, I mean, how do you define developmental? Because that math for nursing that we have, for example, it's isn't
a 0
like,
level class.
It's yeah, but it's not like if you take this, then you can take college algebra, or it's not like the old ones.
No, but it's still a 0.
It's a proficiency course, basically.
Is it the only math course that the student has to take for their program?
For the
Once
nursing,
they finish
yes.
that class, they don't have to take any other math?
For nursing, that is correct, yes.
Okay, so then there's another way to handle that. If it is the only course that the student has to take for their degree, then there will be, I think this Office of 60 by 30, and we'll probably be helping them, will collect that information from colleges. If you have a class that is a 0 level class or a remedial class, and students are taking it and it's not a prerequisite to something else, then you would send a list of the programs that accept that class. So in your case, it would be the nursing program. You'd supply a list of the programs where that class is the terminal math class. And then we'll deal with that. That's a question that I will go for 60 by 30 with whether or not Reconnect can pay for that class, or whether or not there's another way that students can be covered for that class. But I would just be thinking about yeah, okay, so now trust Angela to ask a question that's going to make me think too much on my feet. Can I get back to you on that question? I'm going to go to Kathy Anderson's question, which is, does Pell still pay for 0 level classes? Pell pays for 0 level classes, but the Reconnect rules for this state level program define how the state wants Reconnect students to be treated, and they don't want them to use their financial aid for their Pell for 0 level classes. So that's why it's defined that way. It's not just that they don't want their money to go to those classes, but that they want the students to be treated in a particular way. They want the students in co-rec classes. They don't want them in the standalone classes. For whatever reason, many colleges have many reasons why they think that students might be or should be in those standalone classes, and the Reconnect, to be a Reconnect eligible institution, you cannot have Reconnect students paying for those classes or using their financial aid for those classes.
Okay, so one thing I wanted to, because I know there's other things we've got to get to today, but I know this is a super sticky issue, and it's not like I really wanted to step in it, but I know it's come up too much, and too many schools are concerned about it. So one of the things too that we're going to be talking about this afternoon, or when we get into some of our later activities, is who are we putting in these classes? And I think that's the issue. I thought it was so interesting. Like Nicole from Lansing yesterday was on the office hours, and they pulled some data internally. And Nicole, was it 75% of your students in college algebra, correct me if I'm wrong, 75% did not need to take another, they did not take another math class after it.
Correct.
Okay, so these are the things I want because I understand where people are coming from. I mean, again, for those of you that don't know me, I've taught for 25 years. And I've taught math at the college level for 20. I get what you're talking about. The issue is not, can we get students through the same amount of algebra faster? We have students sitting in algebra classes that shouldn't be. There are all kinds of students sitting in college algebra that shouldn't be. And it's not because we want them in a class that's easier. We want a class that, if I had my druthers, we would not have college algebra anywhere near as much as we do. We overuse it. It's a holdover from old philosophy and thinking about trying to get everybody through algebra and everybody's going to go to calculus. And the reality is they're not. A lot of our students are not going to calculus. The vast majority of most community college students, although it's not the same at every college, are going to get associates in arts. And often they still may transfer, but many times they need something like a statistics or a liberal arts math course, QR course, to satisfy their requirement. So the key to making all of this work is not worry that we're going to have oh my gosh, we're going to put all these students that are very, very lowest in college algebra with a co-rec. How will they survive? My guess is they probably won't be in the co-rec because they shouldn't be in the college algebra co-rec. Usually your students that are the highest need, the highest struggling students, are not headed towards fields that require lots of math and science. Now you may say, but they don't know. And for some of you that are new to this group, we've been talking about this for the last couple of meetings. If they're undecided, unless they know, I'm undecided about which STEM field, but I'm definitely doing STEM. But if they're just undecided, put them in non-STEM. Do not put them in college algebra. Because when we put them in college algebra, that's when we have our chance to lose students. And we've talked about this with different things. And we've talked about different approaches. One thing I want everybody to know, because I had Lansing, the dean from Lansing, Dorothy, and I don't know if she's on today or not, but she asked a really great question. She wanted to know, what are all these states that have been doing this for years? What are they actually seeing? And as someone who reads a lot of research and looks at data all the time, you know, I look at things constantly, but I'm like, I wanted to really go back and see what's the latest research and what are people seeing. And so I've been collecting, and what I compile, I'll share with everybody. But I think it's fascinating that there's no magic bullet. There isn't nothing that's going to get us to 100% pass rates. But yes, co-recs can move the needle for a lot of students. But there's also no magic way to offer co-recs. That's there was just a state report that came out of Texas. It's not like, you know, particularly doing like 1 credit hour or 3 credit hours. There just aren't magic combinations. It's the idea of having students in college level courses that they need for their major, and then giving them support. I'm curious, Mark, and I know we need to move on, but why do you mean it's such a sad reality? What's a sad reality?
Sorry, I'm looking for my mute. Oh, I would just love to see everybody take calculus. I know that they don't need it. It's just such a great class, and I just feel like they're missing out by not seeing it. That's all. I'm totally there with you. I believe that one of the best things we've done at our school is this pivot towards statistics over the last number of years. It's such a practical choice for so many of these disciplines. It makes perfect sense that we'd be doing that. Yeah, I just happen to teach the calculus courses, so I see those numbers go down, and it's just nice to see those classes good and full. And I think that they're kind of on the upswing now. So we'll see how the next couple of years go.
All right. I'm just curious.
Dream.
Got to give it a try, right? Got to give it a try.
So let's head into, I have a little short, again, those of you that are new, I do a little short teaching, like a little just-in-time thing. I have a really short one, and it is about, now that we're really getting into the land of implementing that impacts student services. So everything that you're doing with these changes is going to impact somebody on the campus. But so far, we've been talking about the things that directly impact not just impact, but they would be responsible. The people responsible for making the changes would be in academic affairs. And we're going to be looking at what you guys did last time. I had you work on a planning sheet for academic affairs. That's going to be an activity we're going to do in a little bit. We're going to look at that as a group. Now that you've got more people from your school here, how, you know, just make sure you're all on the same page, what needs to be adjusted. But what we were looking at before is the people implementing those changes were usually faculty or deans that are on the academic side of the house. Now we're going to be looking at the changes where the people are on the student services or student affairs side of the house that are implementing these changes. Everybody gets impacted in some way at some point. So that's what we're going to look at. Let's do this. Okay, so let me get this out of your way because I know you can't see. All right. So how student affairs / student services, I'll just say probably student affairs, but I know it depends on your school, what you call it, impacts implementation. And I know we've got lots of student affairs people here today, which I'm very happy about because we need them. We need you. Okay. These are our 5 components of redesign. We have spent a long time through these first 4 work sessions and office hours working on what courses, and now we talked some about scheduling, but now we need to talk more about scheduling. So you're going to hear me mention that today. We need to come back and it's not just what we offer, but how much and to whom. Okay, so that's going to be something. We've been talking about placement. Some of you are going to keep a placement test. Some of you are going to guided self-placement. We're doing different things with that. Trying to use GPA more. That's the big thing, trying to use GPA more and get away from testing. It's convenient, but not often accurate. Okay. But now we move into advising and registration. We're figuring out the courses. We're figuring out who should take what, but we've got to get those students into those courses. And that is all about we're telling them what they should take, or taking a survey and determining what that is, and then actually registering for them. That's a big component to these redesigns. And even if you're a school, it's we've been doing co-recs for a while. It doesn't mean that piece is working great. If it does, I want to hear all about it so we can, I love to brag about schools that are doing a great job, and we want to learn from what you're doing. But this is a place where I often hear complaints because it's just there's things that aren't working as well as people would like. I'll give you a perfect example. And just because I've heard it so much in the last 2 weeks, I've got schools that are using Banner and they're struggling to get the paired courses, a paired college level course and a support course to show up and a student gets signed up for both of them. These are the kinds of issues we're talking about now. Logistically, how do we get students in these classes? What are our processes and how does all of that work? And what are we changing if we're changing? Because probably some of these things we're going to be changing in the effort to make them better. Okay, that's the idea. It's not just because we don't have anything better to do. Everybody's busy. We know that. Okay, so let's go through a few truths. I did this early on in meetings. These are some new ones, but these are some truths of implementation. Student affairs makes or breaks an implementation. They are so important. So if you're in student affairs, you are so important to this. And as someone who is in faculty for a long time, we often see, okay, if you're going to make a math change, that's a faculty thing. That's a curricular thing. It is and it isn't. We are one part of it, but we're not the whole thing. We have to get those students, the right students, into the courses so that we can serve them. How do you make that happen? Student affairs. That's how that makes that happen. So I've seen so many schools like, we designed everything, but no one ever signed up. Or we never could get the registration system figured out, or we never could get whatever. It's like designing a course is not enough. It's getting it, actually making it happen, happens in student affairs. Okay. This is something, especially I'm talking to the math folks. I know we love black and white. We love planning. We love being able to anticipate everything. And even if you're not a math person, you might be like, yes, that's me. I like to be able to anticipate problems. We try to anticipate problems. That's why we do the activities I do with you guys. I'm taking this from experience of so many schools. What were the common, little bumps that they ran into and how can we solve them? It doesn't matter. There's going to be things that are going to come up when you go to implement that are going to be unique to your school or your situation that we haven't necessarily talked about. So this is another one of those things. If you're on email, please just give me like 5 minutes to do this, and then you're going to be working with your team. I want you to hear these things because this is the stuff that really is the difference between getting where you want to get to or being in this purgatory of making change, but it never really happens and you're just always having to make change. Okay, I don't want you in that purgatory. So you cannot anticipate every problem. You have to be ready to adjust. That is just going to be part of it. You're going to be problem solving as you go. That's why when we get done with these meetings in the intensive we're working on now, then we move into the accelerator, which I'll be getting you guys. We'll have the new schedule for you for April, May, June. We'll be getting that to you in the near future. That's when it's you go to work and now all the bugs come up. How can we help you make that easier? Also, we're going to start talking about what happens in the classroom. We're going to be getting into that. We're going to start talking about what data are you collecting? What are you finding? What's working? What's not? We'll get into all of that stuff once we get into the accelerator, which is basically the real life part. Okay. Making it happen. What's working, what's not. Okay. This is a big one. And I see a lot of resentment that happens at colleges. So I want everyone to be aware of this. Everyone will have to bear a heavy workload at some point when you make a math redesign change, but it will not all be at the same time. Okay. So like one of my colleges that I'm working with, their student affairs, they had a lot to do for a couple of months. They've almost got their piece. Everything's almost where it needs to be. There's still a few items that we're working on, but it's slowed down a little bit. The faculty piece though has ramped way up, but the faculty for up until this point, it was a little bit quieter. And so what happens is this is normal. And people sometimes they get worried because they're like, why am I doing so much work and they're not doing work? Everybody's going to have to do additional work for a little bit. The goal is not forever, just for a little bit, but it's not going to all be at the same time because this is a big thing when you're trying to change something on an institutional level. Okay. Next one. Things are going to take longer than you anticipate. Just be aware of that and be aware we're all humans, and not just that we're humans and we're busy and we all have other lives and things we're doing, but we also just came out of, I don't know if they've declared it over or not, but we dealt with COVID for 3 years. Okay. People have, I just read something today, I think it was in the New York Times. And I think they said one of the things about like, why has COVID impacted our mental health so much? It's because there were things that we thought we had control over and COVID showed us what we don't have control over. And that was incredibly stressful to most people. It's like, I'm very type A, I like to have, things in a certain way. And I didn't have control over much during that time. It was very challenging for everybody. Okay. So know this when you go into this process, This intensive, we do this in 3 months. When you actually go into implementation, it takes a year, probably. You're going to get a ton done by the end of December this year, but it won't all be done. And those of you that have already, like, I think like Muskegon, you've done quite a bit. There's still things that, you know, you guys will have to make adjustments, but you've already done the heavy lift. You just probably have some smaller things you have to do. It doesn't take forever, but it does take some time. People are going to get burnt out. They're going to go on vacation. People are, which is good. They need to go on vacation. You're going to have holidays. Summer is where everything gets kind of dies. And then we come back in August and everybody's back alive again. We're going to have these ebbs and flows. Okay. Momentum is going to change. And then always to make things even better, you're going to probably have turnover at some point. You're going to have somebody leave and someone come in, or multiple somebodies throughout the process. That is part of it. And especially since the pandemic, turnover in higher ed has been even more so. So, you know, this is going to be, you're going to have to roll with things. It's like, you know, you might have like a dean that's been absolutely amazing. And they're like, yeah, I'm leaving. I'm going to a different school. And so what are you going to do? Because I'll never forget the first time this happened to me, because I'm like, we had this amazing dean we were working with, and then she left. And I'm like, what do I do? And it's like, you get that person, you bring them in, you bring them part of the conversations, you explain what you've been doing, and you know, pull them into part of the work. And some people are like, are they going to make me do something different? I like what we're doing. If you can really just explain, like, this is where we got to and why, but be open, because someone is probably going to have other thoughts too. That's okay. You can still get to where you need to get to, even with turnover, but it is going to, you know, it's going to ruffle feathers for just a little bit, or put a little snag into things. Okay, I mentioned this, I think, at the first meeting, but now is where it really happens. It gets worse before it gets better. Think of you when you're cleaning your closet. It gets real yuck for a little bit, but then it will be better. The thing I want you to know is it can be way better in the very near future. And by it, I mean having students, like having more students that are passing. They're not all going to pass, but having more students that are passing, having students that are spending less time in math, getting closer to their degrees sooner. Having, for those of you that are in student affairs, having processes that aren't so tedious and awful and take so much time. There's so many things that we can make better for everybody involved, not just students. Of course, we want it for students, but also you guys are working on this every day. It is not going to seem like things are happening. So if you've ever lost weight, if you've ever worked on anything like trying to gain muscle or anything, it's going to feel like nothing is happening. And you're also going to have moments where you're going to feel like, is this even possible? Like, why are we doing this? I mean, I know we have a law, but like, why are we doing this? You absolutely can get to a better place, but you have to keep at it. That is the thing. I see all kinds of schools that do, but you have to stay with it. So people told me this a long time ago, Kathy, you're like a dog with a bone. You got to have a dog with a bone at your school, someone who is going to persist and stay on this, even when everybody wants to give up. Now, I will say to ye old dog with the bone, give people a chance to breathe though and have rest. People need that as well if you want them to continue on. Everybody needs a chance to breathe a little bit. Okay, this is another thing that's going to come up. This always comes up, okay? So you're going to start putting something into place and it's not going to work, okay? So again, one more time. It gets worse before it gets better. Often when you first implement something, your pass rates go down. It gets worse that way too, okay? It will get better, but there's a learning curve, okay? This is when the skeptics love to come out and see, ha, I told you so. I told you it wasn't going to work. So, and you know what? There's some validity in what they're saying. There probably are some things it's like, yeah, that isn't working yet. So address it. But the other thing I try to tell people is you got to wait a little bit. For us to get like actual outcomes and see what's working, what's not, it takes a minute. So especially if you're brand new to this, when you start, let's say you're going to teach a cohort for the first time this fall, and it's like the second week of September, and you're like, I knew these students weren't going to be able to do this. Please don't give up at that moment. A lot will change. A lot will happen. You've got to suspend some disbelief. I'm not saying, again, be Pollyanna. I'm not saying that, but there's been plenty of people on these calls and plenty of people around the country who've seen what can happen. And their students are not special snowflakes, and they're not different than your students. Believe it or not, this can absolutely happen. All right. Oh, I like that comment that Gary had. All right. So let's do, okay, just going to go there. This is going to come up, and it's probably going to come up today when you start talking. Someone is going to say, we can't do that. It could be anybody, staff, faculty, administration. Someone is going to say, we can't do that. It always happens. Sometimes that's true. That meaning, like this happened this week. There was a school I was working with that they wanted to do pass fail on their co-recs. And so the faculty had decided that they felt really good about it. They had their number of hours they wanted to do. Then they met with some people that were in financial aid and registration and records. And they're like, oh, we can't do pass fail. And so it's like, that's what I'm talking about. We can't do that. Okay. Sometimes it's true. Most of the time it's not. Okay. So here's what people are really saying a lot of times when they're saying we can't do that. Okay. Because again, there's validity to this, but most of the time people aren't being forthright with what they really mean. Okay. So this is what people often mean instead. I don't have the time, the headspace, the resources to do that right now. That's a lot of times what people are saying. They're like, in a perfect world, yes, we would have that. I can barely keep up with what I'm doing now. How are you going to ask me to do more? So that's what a lot of times is coming up. Secondly, is this. What they're really saying is, I don't know how to do that. Like you'll hear, well, we want to do this thing in Colleague or Banner. And you'd be like, I know another school that's doing it. Why can't we do that? And then we're told, well, we can't do that at our school. That may work there, but it doesn't work here. And sometimes it's just as simple as whoever's programming it just doesn't necessarily know how to do that. That's normal. And that's why if that is the case, reach out. It's really funny because this one school has been struggling with Banner so much. I was at another meeting with a group of schools last week, and they were raving about their Banner person at their school, calling them the Banner Wizard. And I think her name was Pauline. Pauline rocked, and she could make everything pair up in the system the way it was supposed to. And I'm like, I need Pauline's name. I need Pauline's email. And I connected them with those people, like, toot sweet. Okay. And things are already improving. Okay. So it's okay if you can't do something. No one expects you to do everything. Just say so, and we'll get you the help. It's not a knock against you if you don't know how to program something a certain way, or like if you're faculty, if you're like, I don't know how to teach those kinds of students. I've only ever taught the upper level students. We will help. That's the goal of it. Sometimes this is, you're afraid, like, I don't know if I'm allowed to do that change. I don't know if the people above me will approve it. So that sometimes is happening. And this is what happens too. Sometimes people are like, when they're saying we can't do that, sometimes what they really mean is, I don't want to do that because I think it's just going to make things worse. And so sometimes it's like, but I don't want to sound like the naysayer, so I'll just say we can't do that. Again, it can be true. It's often not, though. Okay, so here's what you're going to do in this next activity in just a minute. I want you to actually raise the things that you are concerned about. I'm going to give you a list of what you're going to do. You just have a couple of questions to answer as a group. But you need to have a real conversation and voice real concerns. So like if you are in advising, and if you were like, I'm freaking out right now, I don't know how we're going to be able to do all of this, say that so that we know that's something at your school we need to address. But keeping it in won't help. And academics, we are so polite to each other's faces. And then we go back to our offices and our groups, and then we just don't do that. I know that feels like that's the easiest thing to do. Don't do that. Say today, okay, I'm concerned about this. I'm worried how this is going to play out. I'm worried about whatever. Say it. You can be polite and honest. You don't have to, people are afraid, well, if I'm honest, then I'm going to be rude. Well, don't be rude, be respectful, but say the truth if there's something you're genuinely concerned about, so that we can actually address it. Okay, so, I forgot I had this. All right, so best practices, we just have a few more things. Number one, every time you're meeting as a group, keep the goal in mind. There's a reason why I'm always asking you, what's your goal? What's your goal? And you're going to write it again in your schedule, because you need to be thinking about that when you get worn out. Secondly, you will have to meet regularly, but you should be meeting regularly as a core team, which is what we do here, but you're going to have subgroups that are going to have to meet. Like maybe your advisors, they're going to have a separate meeting and just work on certain things, or your admissions people. So just expect we're not going to get everything done here, and that's okay. Next is, please, you have to communicate to every area that's impacted, and you have to do it in lots of ways and more often than you think. People are busy. They don't hear things, you have turnover, whatever. you're going to need to repeat yourself. And if they've heard it once before, great, because someone heard it for the first time when you said it. So put it in print, do it in a meeting, whatever. If you do trainings, I would highly suggest you do them via Zoom because you will have a recording. And that is a nice thing to do. You can get more people to them and you can have the recording. Also, create tools. This is especially for anybody that's on the student services side of the house. Handouts, charts, posters. This is where you loop in, and I will have a note later when we get to our checklist. This is where you loop in your marketing people, your PR people, have them design something pretty that will make it nice that you can have a reference that will make your job easier. Okay. And document processes as you go. So especially if you are in an area where you have like, there's a certain order of things that like students have to do this and this and this, document that. And then it's much easier when you have the list to go back and look at, oh, this is the part that's problematic. We just need to adjust this one piece instead of thinking our whole intake process doesn't work. It's like, no. There's probably pieces of it that may need some work, but not the whole thing usually. And I'm going to ask you to do this. You're going to have to sell these changes to everyone impacted, including students. You're going to have to advocate for why you're doing this. And it can't just be because the state told me I had to. Okay, you're going to have some reason why you believe in this and you are encouraged and you're selling it, quote unquote, to other people. All right, so now let's get back to your, we've done the lesson. Now we're going to be going to work, come back, go to work, come back. That's what we're going to be doing for the next hour and 10 minutes. So you're going to have lots of time to talk with each other. Okay, first thing, I say this to you guys each time, when you have a chance, someone in your group, if you can go back to your schedule to copy your goal from the project and put it in today's schedule. It's always good to have it front and center. Okay, this is what we're gonna do in breakout 1. I'm gonna give you 15 minutes. So we're gonna come back at, well, when I release you, 15 minutes from then. So I'll send a note out to all the breakouts. You're going to be filling out this table and you're going to talk about institutional change. Okay, so first thing is, anybody that's in your group, what are the concerns that you have that maybe you've said, maybe you haven't said, but what are some things? Let's get them in print. We're worried about intake. We're worried about guided self-placement. We're worried, whatever. Let's get it documented. Let's write down what it is that we're worried about. Okay, then the big one is when you disagree, because you're going to be making decisions today and you're not going to all agree. What are you going to do? Okay. And it's not get quiet, make nasty text to your friend. It's like, what are you actually going to do when you disagree? I want you to think about that. That's a hard thing to do, but I want you to try. Okay. Then what happens when you do that and it doesn't work? And so you hit a stalemate. What are you going to try to do then? Make your best guess. There's no right or wrong answer for that. Just like, what do you think you guys will try to do if you get to a place where you just cannot agree? What's going to be our outcome so that we can keep moving forward in some way that's palatable, but knowing that we're at a stalemate. All right. So we're going to come back at 7 after the hour. These are your, based on your college, that's your breakout room number. Come on, breakouts. Where'd you go? Zoom, zoom, zoom. Okay. Why can't I? There we go. I'm like, where's my breakout rooms? Okay. Breakout rooms. I will put 16. I don't know that we'll need all 16, but just in case. You can choose your room. Many of you have been here, so it'll just automatically put you there, but here you go. Based on, like, if you're Kalamazoo, pick 4. Go ahead and now we'll come back at 8 after the hour. So you have 15 minutes. Just try to answer the 3 pieces in that table. That's it. We'll do more when we come back together. Oh, I have to open the rooms. Who knew? Again, you wouldn't know I use Zoom every single day. All right. Have fun. Okay, so I would love if someone from each school could go into the chat and just put, like, your abbreviations. You could put like OCC. What did you guys decide on that you were going to try to do if you disagree? So the one I have highlighted. Oh, interesting. Okay. So Mark, I'm taking it by your comment. You guys typically agree on things?
Yeah, honestly, I've worked in this department for 11 years and I don't think we've ever had a knockdown drag out like that. So
Yay. Okay. Thank you, Chris. That's what we need to do. Cage match. Totally agree. Well, I'm wondering more like, not just even within a department, but I'm like across like, you know, other areas of campus. Do you guys generally, are you able to get consensus at some point?
yeah, I don't really, I mean, maybe speak up, Rhea or Gary, if I'm wrong, but I don't really experience that in our neck of the woods. So
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah,
isn't
I
that
would
way
agree
everywhere.
too. Yep. I mean, we talk, and if there's people bring up what their concerns are, and we try to like talk about options for other options, and we seem to come to a consensus, you know. I think the only other time that we've had, maybe say we're in a meeting and there's 8 of us and we think there's some disagreement, we'll go to a vote, and then whatever the vote is, that's what we do. And everyone's like, okay. I don't know.
That's the same thing here at Wayne County Community College. We've all worked together for quite some time. So we'll just talk it out, look at the data and come to a consensus. We've got a really good team and we all communicate well, so we should be good.
I love it. I love it. You got, this is awesome. I mean, and I know you guys are sharing, and I'm hearing such positive things. I don't want you to think that I'm like a negative Nelly. It's just because I see it often. And if you guys never have this, yay. I hope it's smooth all the way through. But I do like that most people are like, yeah, it's okay. And if we disagree, we'll talk. That's the main thing, is not just like holding it in and getting really irritated, but just having a conversation, which is hard. I'm not gonna say it's easy, but it's helpful. Gary.
Yes, I think the main disagreement is probably between like the faculty side of the house and the student services side of the house.
Yes.
Because faculty seem to all agree, they see things one way. Maybe student services all agrees, they see things another way.
Yes.
You know, so I think that's where we said we have to kind of wait and, you know, don't assume necessarily any motives on the part of the other person, which may be common to assume. And just kind of have a civil discourse about it. Well, why do we feel this way? Why do we feel that way? What's the best thing to do going forward? That sort of thing. Because, I mean, when we realize we're all trying to do the same thing, which is what's best for students, then your perspectives kind of go away at that point.
And that's exactly, you nailed it. The issue that I see is we all care about students. I mean, I assume so, or we wouldn't be doing this. But what happens is, well, that's not true, because we also were told to do this. But regardless, we care about students. I'm going to assume everybody here does. The problem is we have different lenses that we see things. And I think it was interesting, like, you know, I was faculty for so long, but then I went into a more administrative role. I've also had a staff role. It's very, very, very different in every single place. And there are valid concerns that each group is going to bring up. And I think the main thing is being willing to think about their perspective and you're like, you know, like, I'm sure there's truth to that. Where is the truth in that? And what could we do to address that concern? So I have a lot of faith that you guys will be able to work through disagreement. If for some reason you totally get to a stalemate and you cannot reach out, the biggest thing that I probably do with schools most often is finding what I call win-win solutions. I try to listen, like, what is like student services? What does administration want? What does faculty want? Where are we disagreeing? Is there some compromise that is not going to, where everybody loses, but there's no winners, but we feel like everybody's getting something a little bit that's important to them and we're able to move forward. That's the key thing. Because sometimes you can have like where everybody compromises and then it's like, well, that's not going to help anybody. And that's not what we want. We want it to be something that truly does benefit every group. Yes, we have to do what's in the best interest of our students. And I think the issue is, I think everybody thinks they are, but they're looking at it from different viewpoints. And I know, you know, just speaking, I know faculty often are thinking, I've seen students that are so low and they can't get through what we're going to get through now. How are they going to get through a college level class? And again, it comes down to probably a lot of other reasons why they can't do what they're doing now is often we don't let them, it's a lot of algebra, it's highly abstract, and we're not usually letting them use very much technology. When you put a student into something like quantitative reasoning or liberal arts math, they don't all pass. but the pass rates are generally nationwide higher. Universities, colleges everywhere, they're higher than college algebra. People can wrap their brains around things related more to money and to things that are in daily life and have there's real application to it. There are students right now, it's like, I can't do it your way. I can't do it the algebra way, but I could figure it out in my real life. Those are students that often can shine in when we get them into classes like QR and stats. So that's where we have to be like, maybe there is a different way. Maybe there's something, nothing magic, but there can be things that will work. Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. At Montcalm, math faculty and counselors on the same page, but an admin recently voted. Your admin vetoed guided self-placement is too much of a barrier. Would anybody from Montcalm talk about that? That's really interesting. I'd love to hear more what happened there. Let's spill the tea. Come on. No, I'm kidding. Perhaps you should ask what parts of see is a barrier. Yeah, I'm curious. Does anybody want to speak to that, or like, no, that's probably all we're going to share.
I will say that it's still kind of not a direct communication issue. There's a lot of hostility between the president and the faculty, and that's kind of coloring a lot of this. But she sees it as a barrier to student enrollment, and is her priority.
She sees guided self-placement as a barrier?
She sees anything that would be presumed by a student to say that they can't take a course as being a barrier.
Because usually you hear the other side. It's like they're a lot of times you'll hear people that are against any kind of testing and they want students to have choice. That's what I'm not clear on, because when guided self-placement, they have choice.
I personally don't think she's really invested a lot of time in understanding or even reviewing what our guided self-placement is.
Okay.
But
well, here's the beautiful thing. We're working as a group. I love working with you guys and seeing like all these different approaches and personalities and, college, just there's so many dynamics here. There's actually several of you that are doing guided self-placement. We will get data. We will find out more what works and doesn't work. And for those of you already doing it, what works and doesn't work as we go on. And I think that information can be brought back to campuses where maybe there's something you wanted to do, but we're not doing that right now. You're going to have data from your peers in the near future. Okay. Yeah.
Kathy, if I could just add to what you said, and if it's at the presidential level, as Don indicated, we have Jenny Schenker with us today, who obviously oftentimes will have conversations with the presidents. And so MCCA may have an opportunity to once again kind of circle back to best practices and things like that. And I don't presume to speak for Jenny, but I'm sure that might be partly what's, the wheels that are turning in her head right now with this comment.
Yes, Mike, and you've worked with me a long time. No, I am curious how we might be able to help. Is what I kind of heard from Don is that perhaps your president doesn't completely understand what guided self-placement is, or there's a disconnect between how it's been explained to her and what actually it is. And I'd be happy to help clarify that if you want to send an email and loop me in. I don't want to reach out and say, hey, your faculty is tattling on you in the math workshops, but there might be, if you were to invite a conversation, I've had conversations with your president before and happy to do so again.
Awesome. All right. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do, because I want you guys to have the most time to talk and work together, let's just overview where we're at with things. I'm going to open up breakout rooms, and then you can just keep working together. Now, one of the things that you need to be thinking about is, granted, some of you might be on spring break or going to be on it in the near future or whatever. So I get that people are in and out, but you need to be thinking about who else do we need to have here at the next meeting? because some of you have very large groups and some of you have your usual core team. When we get into these student affairs, student services questions, sometimes having someone from financial aid or whoever does your admissions or whoever does, banner, whatever, it's nice to have them in the room. Their perspective is very valuable. So that's one of the things I want you to be thinking about. Who do we need to invite? Because basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you your next assignments and let's talk about homework, and then I'll let you just work. So you have, get some time, get some things accomplished. So you're going to start working on the student affairs planning table. We'll look at that in a second. You're not going to get it finished. The goal is to finish it next time. The real goal for today is to have the discussion, especially if you brought in people more so than the core team, to discuss where you guys are at with your academic affairs planning table and talk through it as a group and like, okay, this is where we've gotten to. Like, is everybody, what is there anything that we missed? Is there something we still need to address? Are there things that we're still trying to figure out? So the main thing you're going to be working on is reviewing what you did, which was your homework last time, which was the academic affairs planning from Schedule 4, where we are really trying to go through like, hey, when are we doing this? And, what changes need to be made to the catalog and all that minutia, because that's just part of it with part of planning. Okay. So the big thing is when you go with your group, especially if you have new people here that haven't been here, really talk about placement, since that is the biggest thing and it impacts every group. Talk about placement. And if there's any things that you're still trying to figure out, or if it's like, this is what we've got to, we just want to make sure everybody understands what we're doing, whatever, but share and talk about placement so you're on the same page with it. Also, logistics with serving students who have greater needs. A lot of times there's other areas of the campus that, and faculty may know about them, but faculty may not know that you have things at your disposal that we can serve students in other ways. Have those conversations. What programs, what tutoring, maybe there's a tutoring budget someplace, and where could we tap into some things to get additional support for students on our campus? What works. Okay. In all likelihood, whatever you wrote in that table that you did last time, you're going to make some adjustments on it. That's okay. It's not just FYI. It's let's talk about this as a group. How do we feel about things? That's going to take time. Okay. And I get that. So once you get through that, which is again, like I said, I don't know if you'll finish it today, but maybe you will. Then you start working on student affairs planning. And this is the table that anything you can get done on this today, awesome. The main thing is figuring out who do we need to have here on the 24th so that we can work on this, because you're going to get quite a bit of time to work on this. And here's one thing I would really like to encourage you to do, especially since talking to Kalamazoo Valley this week, talking to Lansing, they're getting data to get a better sense of like who's taking our beginning and intermediate algebra right now, who's taking our college algebra. That data is super valuable, because one of the things that you're going to need to be thinking about as part of the student affairs planning is what I've got highlighted here is who are you advising to take these different courses? Right now, you may have, as some schools have found, a whole bunch of people taking college algebra who shouldn't be in it. They should be in a different class altogether. So this is where you also know, like, maybe we know that information, maybe we don't. Could we get some data in the next couple of weeks? And if you're like, Kathy, you're delusional, there's no way we can get data. The easiest thing you can do if you cannot get institutional level data is do a survey. You can make a quick Google Forms survey and give it to like all the people that teach like your intermediate algebra or all the people that teach your college algebra, and have students fill out what program or what major they're in, or there's different ways to do it. But you could do that in the next 2 weeks, provided you don't have 2 weeks of spring break, but that is possible to get you some data. Once you get that figured out, who are we going to be directing to take which pathway, which course, that's probably going to impact your schedule. Do you need more or less of any courses? So that's what we're getting into, is that whole like the minutia. How do you make all this happen? Okay. Our next meetings are, we have an office hour Thursday the 23rd, and we have our next work session Friday the 24th. That's work session 6, and that'll be the last one. I know that we won't all be done necessarily from them, but the goal is that we get your planning document done, or as much as possible, so that we've reached a kind of a good first goal. Before I turn you loose, what questions do you have? And also leave if you need to. I'm going to close the rooms at the top of the hour. If you guys are good, stay as long as you want, leave when you need to. Any questions or comments? And also if you need help, there's a way to ask for help and I can pop into a room and I don't know if Ginny, Ginny's still here. She might be able to too. Gary.
Just a quick question. Does anybody have a good answer to the whole math for nursing situation?
Yeah, anybody else? What are you guys doing for your math for nurses?
So if I can speak for just a quick second, our nursing program changed this. We have like a Math 102 practical algebra, which is sort of, it's not a baby QR, but shouldn't speak for my math faculty, but it might become a baby QR because we also have a college like MTA level QR that we've implemented already, and it's fully developed. But bottom line is students have two options that they're directed to for nursing. Either they can, at this point, they can test with Accuplacer to meet, if they place at a certain level, they don't have to take a math class for nursing. So the nursing program did that, I think, in the effort to cut back the number of credits. The other option is if they don't, then they take that Math 102 course, practical algebra, which is geared towards, very basic math for health and kind of business. So.
Right. Well, that's essentially the same thing we have at Muskegon. They can test out to demonstrate proficiency. They use Accuplacer, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They get 3 tries. And then if they're not successful on that, or if they just don't want to take Accuplacer, then they can take, the only problem, quote unquote problem, is we're calling it Math 099 instead of Math 102.
Right.
It doesn't sound, from your very brief description, it doesn't sound like my Math 099 class is going to be significantly different from your Math 102. But
right.
So
yeah, I'm sure it's very similar. And Gary, what I guess where my mind goes is kind of where my mind has already gone for KCC is, what if you developed it into a baby QR sort of course? Kind of like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Michigan State has a Math 101 and 102 sequence. And I know theirs is a bit different, that they're more similar in terms of level. But Oakland Community College has a math literacy and quantitative reasoning. And those two courses together equate to MSU's Math 101 and 102. I'm sorry, Ken, for speaking for you folks, but I'm just familiar with your curriculum. So that, I don't know if that's helpful at all, because then it would be a different course and perhaps you could just redevelop and still keep the pieces of your 099 that are helpful for the nursing students, but maybe do kind of a value added as well.
The other thing that I've seen schools do is sometimes they will add the department themselves will add their own type of math course or refresher or something, or a 1 credit hour lab or something, or maybe more than 1 credit. They will create something themselves, is what I'm trying to get at. They may even have the math department teach it, but they will create it and it will be it will have like a nursing acronym on it. The other thing is sometimes they just change, instead of having a developmental algebra requirement, they'll just go to having whatever the QR course is, that will be the requirement. Or sometimes they use, say like a student, either if they're ready for, they've met the nursing requirement for math. If not, then they have to go through their boot camp or something like that. So those are some of the ways I've seen people solve it.
I like that best. Just change it to a nursing course, but the math people still teach it.
Oh, there's all kinds of things people do like
Then the
that.
whole
Yeah.
problem, then the whole problem belongs to the nursing department.
Yeah, you can totally, because technical math, any kind of technical, that is all over the country. It's like there's all different who teaches it, just really varies. So you can do that. Yeah, we're solving problems here, folks. All right, now I'm going to turn you loose and I will close with the top of the hour. Anything you need, reach out with email or here. I'm happy to help. It's always great working with you guys. All right, so we're going to open the rooms. Hopefully, did they open? I think so. Okay. If anybody needs me to move you, let me know.